Low-key geek. Hey, he's a low-key geek. He tries to be out there when he wants to be, but hey, he's low-key. He's a low-key geek.
Oh. All right, sorry about that, guys. I just realized that my mic has been off the whole time. So my whole entire intro was completely ruined. But anyway, um, busy week. Let me just recap it real. I'm gonna rewind real quick here. Um, Been a busy week. Hope you guys are keeping safe. A lot of areas, whether you're in the US or around the world, are slowly starting to reopen, or at least there are phases and discussions about reopening. Here in New York, we're not quite there yet, at least in the city, New York City proper. New York State, there are certain areas within the state that have been given the green light to reopen certain aspects of daily life. Just want to make sure that wherever you are, whatever you guys are planning to do, you remain safe, you be smart about it, take extra precautions, or the necessary precautions, I should say. We just don't know where things are going to land out and head out. Here in New York, we're going to hit 80-degree weather. So, and it's the first time, and it's May. So I feel like it's a little early. Um, it's a great day to be out and about. I was out yesterday running some chores. The sun was out. It was nice, but definitely had my mask on. Had a little bottle of sanitizer, hand sanitizer, and just taking some extra care. And whatever it is that you guys do, I hope you do the same. Um, but what I was about to allude to, before realizing that my mic was off, that when this whole pandemic started, and it was a little different scenario with me, as I explained in my very first podcast. I've been pretty much working from home, or been at home, for about over 2 months now. So probably much longer than most of you. But Facebook has always been like an interesting place to kind of see what your friends are up to, what your friends and peers are kind of finding interesting or hilarious, what they're trying to share with the groups and all that stuff like that. And when the pandemic started, I thought it was like a cute place to kind of see, okay, how are your friends and other people you know handling their situations. I think it's safe to say that a lot of us are either going to be amazing chefs for at least the near future or the time being. A lot of us have discovered baking for the first time. A lot of people are really proud in their sourdough breads and all that. So I hope they've turned out great, and maybe one day I'll get to try some of them. Um, or a lot of you have kind of embraced your inner alcoholic personality and just started drinking relentlessly, or whatever the case is. And a lot of people had a lot of plans to kind of, I'm going to teach myself this, and I'm going to be able to organize my home, or, start a new hobby, or whatever it is. And it's interesting to see how all of you were there at that time and where a lot of you are now. And, I'm a pretty private person for the most part. I do keep my friends very close by and close to heart. And I don't really expand so vastly outside of my circle. So the people that I'm friends with on Facebook, I'm truly friends with, and I'm very close with them. And after these last couple of months, all I can say is that there are a lot of you that I still love very dearly and deeply. But there are a few of you that I am actually very happy not to be stuck with during this time in this situation. Because let's just say some of you can handle these situations a lot better than most. But there are some that are just not meant for these kind of situations. And it's interesting to kind of see the deterioration of the mental state and anxiety and all that. Look, I'm here for you guys. I know it's not easy. There are days that I find like I'm going nuts and all that. I just choose not to air it out on Facebook. But another observation I had too is that Facebook really used this opportunity to kind of, in their minds, try to target you with a lot of interesting and what I like to say, trying to be funny content and video. I don't know if your Facebook feeds are like mine, but I am very, very done with the whole Bushman prank. Scaring people in the street, pretending you're a bush, was funny at first, but now I'm a little tired of it. The college guy attempting to pick up girls by offering them money was interesting in the beginning. Now, not so much. The whole Gold Digger series, or whatever the case, or whatever they want to call it. A lot of cute dog videos, a lot of cute animal videos, but I think I'm at the point where it's like up to here already. I'm going to be limiting my Facebook exposure for the time being. But definitely, if it's a means for you to relax, kind of get your mind off of things, then more power to you. But I'm sure you'll be hearing a lot more of those type of observations from me as we move forward. That being said, some interesting stuff hit this week news-wise. First, I kind of want to start off with some things that I found out or I read about from more of the Japanese culture side of things. So one thing that kind of hit the news reel or the outlets is that if you're a fan of anime, and if you're a fan of really good anime, then you're pretty familiar with Studio Ghibli. And what they have done is one of the artists of Studio Ghibli has released kind of like a how-to video, a cute little how-to video on how to draw the Ghibli way. I'm sure you've seen series like this from places like Disney and other certain outlets, but I thought this was extremely cute, where one of the main artists over there has decided to do kind of like a little nice tutorial on how to go about in kind of drawing Totoro, one of the more famous characters in the Ghibli universe. So definitely, if you have the time and if you are looking for something interesting to kind of do with your kids, then this is something and will be like an interesting exercise for you to do as a group together. I've seen a lot of you are kind of um, doing a lot of family activities. If you're a single parent, you're trying to do stuff with your children, whether it's like cooking or putting puzzles together or playing board games and things like that. I think this will be something interesting to kind of expose them to, especially if they're a fan of animation, and if they've already been exposed to Japanese animation. I think Totoro is one of the characters that have been exposed to children at a very early age, because of the storyline and how cute and sweet the storyline is, and it's very easy to digest for children. So I think that's something interesting for you guys to check out. So I will be, as I do with every show, I will provide links to some of the topics that I talk about for you guys to check out later. And before I move on, again, just a reminder. I have my set schedule of things that I want to discuss, but if at any time you want to interrupt my flow and talk about a different topic, or if you have a question that you really want me to address immediately, please go to the URL above. For as little as $1, you can go ahead and shoot over a message. It will pop up on the screen, and I will get a chance to see it, and I will address it right away, so that whatever topic you would like to hear me talk about, I will do so at that moment. And of course, obviously, if you're watching live, hit that follow and like and subscribe buttons. It helps with the algorithm methods of these services, and it helps me out tremendously. If you're watching on the replay on YouTube, please hit that like button. I know it's very easy. I do it too, where I just watch a video. Even though I'm enjoying it, I don't do anything. But hitting that like button does really help the algorithms, and do subscribe. So moving forward, a couple of Japanese artists have gone ahead and released additional activities for you to do at home during this time. One of which is Yoshito Manara. If you're familiar with Japanese art and then pop culture art, or kind of like that type of art, a very well-known artist in the world in this type of realm. So he teamed up with Japan Society, as he does occasionally. Last year, he had a special exhibit that he hosted at Japan Society. And if you don't know what Japan Society is, it's a cultural institution here in New York City, that kind of showcases Japanese culture, art, music, performances, movies. It's a place I go to frequently. I don't know if I'll have a chance to go back there this year, but he teamed up with them to kind of create this nice little downloadable piece of art that you can color at home. Again, another great activity for you and your kids to do, or just you in general. As an adult, there's nothing wrong with coloring and indulging in your art. So I think this is something that will be fun to do for a most beloved character that he has, drawn over and over again. And another artist within the same vein, Takashi Murakami, again, very popular artist, especially amongst the hip hop world. He's done cover work for Kanye West and other artists. Huge collaborator in pop culture, and this time he's teamed up with J Balvin for an initiative called Families Belong Together. And here he has provided another great downloadable piece of work that you could take home with you and color and design and customize any which way you like. Again, like either by yourself or with your kids or with your family. I think this is something that will be extremely fun and a nice way to kill time, especially for the upcoming weekend or weekends, since it doesn't look like schools will be reopening anytime soon, especially since it is already mid-May. Most most schools are already at this time heading into graduations and all that, and moving on off of this current semester. So definitely check this out. Links will come once the show is over. So, moving on, something else interesting coming out of Japan, some interesting news. So, again, sticking and going back to Ghibli, how Miyazaki, as if you follow his career and if you've been following the Ghibli universe, you know that at one point he announced his retirement, that he was no longer going to be producing new movies and new animation. But he has come out of retirement, and it was announced that Studio Ghibli was working on two new features. Release dates are to be determined, but one of them is actually Miyazaki's kind of out of retirement new piece of work called Kimitachi wa do ikiru, or in English they say it's translated to "How do you live?" The interesting thing about this movie, and it's very typical in Miyazaki's way, is that he's continuing the original art form of hand drawing his movies and animation, and because of it being hand drawn, and unfortunately because of the current pandemic and problem that we find ourselves in now, only 36 minutes of the movie has been done so far, and they've been working on this, I believe, since last year. According to some of the animators and people over there at Studio Ghibli, it's an exciting time for them and they enjoy working on it. But unfortunately, it doesn't look like the movie will be done and completed until 3 years from now. That's just how long it's going to take because of the hand-drawn process, and I think because of the stoppage and blocks because of the current pandemic. So again, no real details have been released, at least from what I could see, and it'll be interesting to see what they could put together for this new piece of work from Miyazaki. So stay tuned. I'm sure more will be released as the years go by. We have a long time to wait for this to come along. So stay tuned. Now, something else to stick within the Ghibli train. A lot of Ghibli news this morning. Nothing wrong with that. Most times, Studio Ghibli is very silent and quiet. Nothing much to report there. But if you've had the chance, like I have, I've mentioned before that I consider Japan to be my second home. I've been there more than 10 times. And one of my earliest memories of visiting Japan is visiting the Ghibli Museum. If you're familiar or not, Studio Ghibli put together a small little museum in the city of Mitaka in Tokyo. And basically, it celebrates all of the Ghibli works of art and animation form, where you kind of get to see, sample setups of like their studios, their animation studios. It's a very fantastical environment, akin to like how Disneyland would be if they were to treat Ghibli in a certain way. You have a lot of interactive environments. You have a lovely garden outside, where at the top of the museum you get to see a statue of the infamous robot from I believe it's Laputa. So you get to it's a great photo opportunity. They have a great little cafe, and you can even, they don't really allow adults to do it, but for your kids, they are allowed to sit and play inside an actual giant cat bus, like you see in My Neighbor is Totoro. So, if this was something that you already knew of and you wanted to visit, or if you had plans to visit Japan this year and this was on your bucket list, tickets for the museum as of recent have been very hard to come by. They had a resurgence of interest, especially from tourists. But it doesn't look like a lot of people are going to get to visit there this year. Obviously, they're closed for now. Don't know if they'll be able to reopen this year or not. But what they have done, and this is reported by the Travel and Leisure website, is that they have put together kind of like a virtual museum, a virtual tour of their museum. Something that is that you could, from the safety of your own home, kind of enjoy the sights and sounds of the Ghibli Museum. So take it from me as someone who's been there twice. It is very captivating. It is very cute. And if you're a fan of any of the Ghibli movies, you will find something there that you will find interesting and fascinating. So if you have the chance, I highly suggest that you sit down and kind of take this virtual tour and enjoy the sights and sound of the Ghibli Museum, because it is definitely worth taking a look at. And hopefully this can kind of help gear you towards planning a potential trip in the future. So again, link to come after the show. So moving on to some news that is outside of Japan this time. Some unfortunate news coming out of Broadway. Again, I do live in New York, so I do like to talk about things that happen locally around me. And because this is pandemic, and if you've been to New York or you currently live in New York, one of our biggest tourist driving events and occasions is Broadway, and people love coming to watch their Broadway shows. Broadway was seeing a pretty good year last year, obviously because of hits like Hamilton, and other kind of huge shows like Book of Mormon, and Wicked is still alive and kicking. But unfortunately, Broadway has seen its first victim because of this pandemic. And Disney's Frozen, the musical that opened last year, is reportedly the first Broadway show that will be shutting down for good because of the pandemic. Unfortunately, due to the losses in revenue and ticket sales and attendance, they cannot foresee themselves holding on and hoping for a reopening in the near future. So they have decided to permanently close up shop. And that's unfortunate, because if you're familiar with Broadway production, there's a lot of people who are involved in putting these shows together. It's not just the talent that you see on stage, but a lot of the backstage talent, set designers, set operators, stage managers, musicians for the music. So a lot of these people, even though they have been currently unemployed, look like they are fully unemployed and don't have a current job to go back to. So I'm pretty sure, well, I'm hoping that a lot of them can find new work moving forward, but it is kind of an unfortunate time for them to hear that, this terrible news. So it reminds me of a story. Since I did used to work in the city, I take a lot of breaks and I would walk around. And I remember bumping into this one lady who was extremely frantic. She was holding a bunch of papers in her hand, talking on the phone, drinking her coffee. And then she decided to kind of put her coffee down, put her papers down, because she had to finish up this call, and you could tell her mind was all scrambled, and then she just started walking again, leaving all of her papers on the floor. And I had to call her out and say, hey ma'am, don't forget your papers and all that. And she was like, oh my god, I'm so sorry. By the way, if you ever happen to watch Frozen, I am currently on my way to an audition to be the backup to for the lead. I was like, oh my god, that's awesome. I wish you the best of luck and all that stuff. I haven't seen Frozen. I don't know if she ever make it, but those are just some of the stories that you could find yourself in retelling when you work and live in the city. So unfortunate news there. So hopefully a lot of the people involved with the production can find something new moving forward. Moving into some gaming news, more gaming news. If you watch the podcast I do with Paul from Paul Programs on Wednesday, we dive deep into a lot of the major news that happened earlier in the week and the end of last week. But since then, there's been some additional amazing news. One of which is yesterday, Sony released gameplay footage of their upcoming title, Ghost of Tsushima. Um, this was something that I think some of us were expecting to come sometime soon, but we didn't expect it to come out this week. And it looks like Sony is really on a hot streak right now, after their work with Epic Games in releasing first time footage of the Unreal 5 engine and how it looks like coming out of the new PlayStation 5 platform. Now we get to see footage of this anticipated upcoming title. And I just watched it for the first time right before I went live today, and I have to tell you, it looks gorgeous. It's an amazing looking game, very cinematic, especially if you are a fan of the old samurai ninja, the old Japanese black and white movies that were made popular by a lot of famous actors and directors. It, it definitely has a callback to that feel, and the landscapes and the graphics are very seamless, very beautiful to look at. I could imagine how it would look like in full-blown 4K, for those of you who have the means to play it and look at it that way. They even covered the interactions of the characters, how it's an open world environment, so you can interact with a lot of the landscape, and even interact with animals that you come across. The fighting mechanics looks very intense and very, very amazing. It's kind of a stealthy game, so a lot of it really depends on how stealthy you can be, how you can get in and out of cities and towns, and accomplish the missions and goals that you have set for yourself. Um, it it just looks like you're watching a movie, which is fantastic. And they even know that, and they play to that fact because they allow for various modes, like photo mode and cinematic mode, which allows you to turn the game black and white and really live some of your combat and action scenes in a black and white cinematic way. So again, like if you are a fan of like the Kurosawa movies of the past, this definitely has a huge callback to that. So it's very amazing. I wasn't looking forward to this because I think I was let down by a lot of similar type games that have come out in the past. But this looks like it might pique my interest a bit. I'm just not a huge fan of the open world type of games these days. I'm more in tune with your rail type, get me from A to B type of games. Like I kind of want to be led through a specific storyline and not have to explore out and do all these little side missions and all these little things. So not really a huge fan of that, but this game might intrigue me enough to kind of at least test it out. If I have the option to kind of stick to an A to B storyline, then I'm going to go ahead and definitely probably do that. So definitely something worth checking out. And if you have a chance and you haven't seen the footage yet, it's online and linked to come. Definitely worth checking out. And then in surprise news that I don't think any of us was expecting, Paper Mario's back. And that brought a huge smile to my face when it was announced Wednesday morning. I was completely shocked, and I wasn't really expecting to see anything new coming out. Not Wednesday morning, yesterday morning. So yesterday was definitely a big day for game news, but Paper Mario is one of those series that I really, really loved and I really endear, mostly because it was very different to when you compared it to all the other Mario games. When it first came out back in 2000 for the Nintendo 64, it was one of those refreshing games that kind of refreshed the genre for myself, where it had a lot of RPG elements in there, and it wasn't like your typical platformer, which the Mario games are always typically known for. Super Mario RPG came out and that kind of changed things around. But when Paper Mario came out, not only was the gameplay new and refreshing, but just the look of it was extremely adorable and cute and very, very unique too, because I've never seen a game take advantage of like the flat 2D paper-like animation like this series has, and it really drew my attention. The series has seen its release on pretty much all the major Nintendo platforms, whether it was GameCube, Wii, or Wii U. So this will be their first release for the current platform, the Nintendo Switch, and I'm definitely 100% looking forward to it. This is a game I'm definitely 100% going to be playing. And I might even go back to some of the past games, because there are some of the games that I've played in the past that I didn't really get a chance to play so much of. So, I'm definitely going to look forward to kind of revisit the series as a whole. But in not only was it a huge surprise that they were working on this game, but the next surprise that kind of hit is that it's going to be coming out in July already. So we are only just shy 2 months of experiencing the new addition to the Paper Mario world. So I'm so excited. I can't wait, and definitely looking forward to see what they're gonna be able to put together for us there. So I'm sure a lot more to come as the months go by and the release date gets closer. But definitely something that I'm going to keep keeping my eye on. And again, if you cannot tell, I'm super excited for this game. Definitely one of my favorite series out there. So just in some smaller game news here, this came out earlier in the week, and I didn't really have a chance to talk about it except on Twitter. I have been playing, or I have played Predator Hunting Grounds on PlayStation. I had fun with it for that time I played. I've always been wanting to go back because it's been some time since I've been back. But it's interesting that they announced that the famous character of Dutch, who was played and portrayed by Arnold Schwarzenegger in the original movie, is coming back. They're releasing downloadable content on May 26th, where they're going to add a storyline of Dutch within the game. It's not clear, and it doesn't look like you could play him as a character just as of yet. But Arnold did record some new dialogue that within the game you're going to be hearing tapes of him speaking and kind of recapping what he's been up to this whole time in the Predator universe. So I'm hoping that they can add him as a playable character in the future, or at least be able to play alongside of his character. I don't know how they're going to do it, but it's exciting if you're a fan of Predator and a fan of this game. I, for one, appreciate the game for what it is. So I am looking forward to that. And if you are a Switch owner and you do have access to the NES and the SNES, virtual consoles, they announced that next week, I believe on May 20th, they are releasing some new titles for each virtual console platform. So for Super Nintendo, they're going to be releasing Operation Logic Bomb, Panel de Pon, and Wild Guns. And for the NES, they are releasing Rygar. So for Rygar, I remember that game. I used to own that game. That was a really, really fun action platformer game, akin to like Ninja Gaiden a little bit, but not as extremely difficult and frustrating. And then for the Super Nintendo, Wild Guns is a great arcade shooter, which is really fun. You get to play your cowboy and West-like characters and scenarios, and it was something I remember playing in the arcades also, and it was a lot of fun. So definitely check it out if you are a fan of the retro games, and if you're a fan of heading backwards and playing through the virtual console. Also, I don't know if you guys know of or have seen this YouTube series called The Gaming Historian. I've been watching his videos and following him for a good amount of time now. He is a great he puts together these great videos that kind of goes back and tells the history of a certain game or history of a certain time within gaming. And it's definitely like a great watch. He's done some great episodes where he looked into, how Mario was created and put together, the Legend of Zelda series, some of the more controversies around gaming. He released a new video, I believe, over the last weekend, where he goes into Sega's kind of answer to Zelda in the game called Crusader of Senti. Now, it went under a different name in Japan, but basically this was their answer for the Genesis on creating kind of more an action RPG platformer to compete with the likes of Zelda. And I vaguely remember this game back in the day, but then watching and hearing the story behind it really, really intrigued me. And I didn't know it was one of those limited release games. That's one of the reasons why a lot of people don't really know about it. I did a brief search on eBay to see how much a game like that would cost. Brand new, unopened, a game like that will run you almost $800. Unopened, opened with everything included, it'll run you like around $3. And just the cartridge alone will already clock over $100. So it's one of those like collectible rare games out there, but with emulators and things of that nature. I'm sure there's ways to find it and try it out. I might do so. I don't know yet, but it looked very interesting and it looks pretty for a Genesis game, especially a Genesis game of that type. So I may be looking forward to checking that out. But do check out that episode and check out the series if you have the chance, because there's a lot of good content there for you to check out and relive your history and memories of video games in the past. So moving off of video game news, some more of like entertainment news and all that. The big news that kind of like started cracking on Monday and kind of lingered throughout the week is Mandalorian news about this casting of Katie Sackhoff to reprise her role as Bo-Katan in season 2 of The Mandalorian. As of what I know today, both Lucasfilm and Disney still hasn't confirmed anything. Even Katie herself, I believe, still has no confirmation about it at all. But it looks like this is something that is truly happening. And like I said before, it just looks like season 2 of The Mandalorian is going to be a reunion of the Clone Wars and Rebels. So, but in live action form. And I think that would be an interesting thing to kind of see how that's gonna play out. The Boba Fett or not Boba Fett rumors, or is Rex gonna be in it? Is interesting to kind of see how that plays out. So definitely check out that news, and we'll see what happens when season 2 of Mandalorian comes out later this year. But one thing I will say is that it is definitely worth checking out this new series that they have on Disney Plus called Disney Gallery. Right now, they have 2 episodes, and the 3rd episode is supposed to drop, I think, today. It kind of goes behind the scenes of The Mandalorian. I did watch episodes 1 and 2. Episode 1 is really focused on the directors of all the episodes. So you had Taika Waititi there, Rick Fumiyama, Deborah Chow talking about their directing of the episodes. And then episode 2 talks more about the production and kind of more of the storytelling of the series. So very interesting glimpse behind the scenes of The Mandalorian. So it's worth watching if you have Disney Plus. So, and it kind of holds you over until season 2 comes out. So something good to catch. Next bit of things that I found interesting is, again, to kind of help you figure out what you could do at home while you're keeping yourself safe. YouTube will be releasing, or as of yesterday, is releasing Princess Purple Rain concert for 3 days only. You get to see the full concert from start to finish. This was a very iconic and very famous concert that he put together to celebrate his album Purple Rain. A lot of clips that you've seen of Prince performing live was taken from this concert. You have until I believe end of day Saturday to kind of catch the full concert for free on YouTube. So if you're a fan of Prince, if you don't know who Prince is, you should find out because he is definitely an icon when it comes to rock and pop of the past. Great musician, great singer. I'm sure you've heard his songs or even sung his song during any one of your karaoke nights. So definitely do check it out. I think I'm going to check it out this weekend. It should be fun to watch. In other entertainment news, Bill Murray did kind of an online interview with Ellen DeGeneres for Ellen DeGeneres' show. I guess she's doing an online version of her show now. And she had Bill Murray on, and Bill Murray did talk about the new Ghostbusters movie coming out next year now. It was pushed back from this year. And he kind of talked about how much he really, really missed Harold Ramis, who, of course, played Egon in the Ghostbuster franchise. And, he said, like, not only was he missed because of the person, but he missed him because Harold had such huge input in how Ghostbusters played out, and the storylines, and kind of the look and feel. So he was a presence that was hugely missed. And another presence that's missed, unfortunately, is still Rick Moranis. Rick Moranis is still confirmed to not be in the movie. So Rick Moranis, if you followed his career and you understand him, he's been out of Hollywood for a very, very long time. Once very prominent in the 80s and 90s in a lot of movies. He decided to take a step back because of an illness that his wife suffered from. And then he thought that Hollywood was no longer important for him, and he really wanted to focus on his family and really, be with them and spend more time with them. And it led to this huge disappearance from him in Hollywood for a very long time. So unfortunately, it doesn't look like he will be back in the new Ghostbusters. You never know. Bill might be playing coy. We don't know. Bill has been known to do that before. But you can see Rick Moranis, talking about Disney Plus before. He actually did show up in an interview in their Disney Plus's new show called Prop Culture. Prop Culture is this new series that they're doing that kind of dives into the props and sets of a lot of the Disney movies. Each episode is dedicated to a different movie franchise or series. And one of them they have is dedicated to the Honey, I Shrunk the Kids franchise. And they did score a live interview with Rick Moranis. So I haven't seen it yet, but I saw like little clips of it. So it is interesting to kind of see him back on TV. And since he is kind of selective on what he does, he did confirm, or it was confirmed earlier on, that he did agree to kind of show up in the new sequel of Honey, I Shrunk the Kids that is supposed to be starring Josh Gad to play Rick Moranis' older son, all grown up in the future. So if that's true, then we could see him back on the big screen or small screen, depending on how things pan out with this pandemic in the future. So definitely some things interesting to look out for there. Moving on. Now I kind of just want to talk about, as it's Friday, and even though you're probably more than likely already home, you're excited for the weekend because you're gonna be home. I always I feel like I want to be, I don't know if they had this where you guys were, but in New York, growing up, I always listened to morning radio and afternoon radio. And we have this radio station called Z100. Z100 is your local kind of generic pop, top 40, all the mainstream music hit station, right? And every morning back in the 80s and 90s, they had the morning zoo crew. And in the afternoons, they always had the happy-go-lucky, quirky DJ And they always had a special Friday thing where, they celebrated Friday, and they always had this big to do, live from on top of the Empire State Building. It's Kid Kelly or something like that, Z100. And then he had his 5 o'clock Friday countdown, where, big whistle blows and everyone's ready and geared up. It's Friday. And, kind of like Fred Flintstone in the opening of the Flintstones, where he's like, yabba dabba doo. And he's like jumping out the window, sliding off a dinosaur tail, celebrating that he's out of work and gearing up for the weekend. I kind of miss that, I don't know, given that I do this show on Fridays at 12 p.m. Maybe I can do something like that in the future to kind of like pep in the mood, especially if I see that, more and more people are actually in physical offices. Who knows? But I always think about that and, kind of remember those moments. But as you're trying to figure out what to do for the weekend and what to watch is, I kind of like to put together some things that I found interesting that maybe you want to maybe check out this weekend. Before I move on from that, I did forget one other piece of news that I also found interesting from this past week is that DC Swamp Thing. If you recall, Swamp Thing was something that aired on, I believe it was the DC Universe app, if I'm not mistaken, but it was canceled, I believe, after only 3 or 4 episodes, but it got a lot of huge praises and acclaim. It looks like season 1 of the series is actually being picked up by the CW this fall. I'm sure it's to add to their arsenal of all the live action DC TV programming that they have, whether it's Batwoman, The Flash, I believe Arrow already ended, Legends of Tomorrow, all that stuff like that. So it'll be interesting to see like how that kind of plays out since it's coming back. And, where are they going to pick it up from? Is it going to still be gritty? It was supposed to be more like a horror driven type of series, and that's one of the things that kind of got its acclaim. So we'll see how that goes. But moving on to what to watch this weekend. So if you're familiar with Bojo Hong's Snowpiercer, the movie that came out several years ago starring Chris Evans, it was kind of like a cult hit. It was something that I found just on Netflix randomly, and I watched it, and I thought it was very well done. Akin to like The Raid, it takes place on this train, trying to get from one place to another, and all the mishaps and happenings on this train. So you get to see kind of the progression of this man's journey through this train. And the way the train was kind of segregated was that, certain class of people were only allowed to be on certain cars, and the higher class was way ahead in the front of the train. And it was basically a man's journey from the back to the front. But apparently, they've been working on a live action TV show based off of this for some time now, and we finally get to see how it's going to play out this Sunday on TNT. Snowpiercer is debuting this Sunday on TNT. If you're not familiar with who's on the show, they actually got some pretty recognizable names here. They have Jennifer Connelly and Daveed Diggs, who are 2 of the main cast members there. So I think this is something that'll be interesting to see how they're gonna put it together and how it's gonna play out. I'll have a link of the article that explains more about the series and its long production and how the delay of getting it onto the small screen has taken it to where we are now. So I hopefully will get to check it out this weekend. If not, I will definitely catch it on a replay. And if you have been a fan of The Last Dance, the last 2 episodes it will be airing this Sunday. I've been enjoying this series. After these last 2 episodes air, I'll probably put together a separate video to discuss my thoughts about the whole series, and how it recapped that infamous last season of Michael Jordan's Bulls run. Like I said, so far it's been highly entertaining, and definitely worth watching. So last 2 episodes air this Sunday. Something to remember and keep in mind. When it comes to movies, Um, just one second here. Um, normally during this time, if things we're normal, back to normal, so to speak, kind of like people are going to the movies and enjoying. As you know, every Friday was new movie release day, and me being a huge fan of movies, I was always looking forward to this day. Something I envisioned myself covering in these shows was that I was going to discuss what's new in the theater and what's worth checking out and all that. But there is no theater. There's nothing to go out and check out. So what I did is that just for shits and giggles, so to speak, is that I went backwards in time, and I kind of went back to around this time last year to kind of remind myself as to what came out in theaters around this time last year. So, something to remember. The Pokemon movie, Detective Pikachu, came out May 10th of last year. It kind of domestically grossed around $144 million. And it is considered to be one of the more successful video game adaptations out there. I did watch it with a friend of mine in the theater. I liked the first half of the movie, and then I got lost during the second half of the movie. And I think one of the reasons why is that I have not been a Pokemon player or following Pokemon for a very long time, since it first came out here in the States. I feel like if you are a fan of Pokemon, if you're a fan of the series, if you hold the characters very close to your heart and you love them, then this was a movie for you. This was the movie that you've been waiting for. From what I hear or what I heard from a lot of my friends who are huge Pokemon fans and who've watched the movie, they loved it. They thought it was a great movie. So, and as you could see, it was pretty successful in the box office. So, definitely add that to the very small list of highly acceptable video game adaptation movies. Of course, number one for me will always be the original Mortal Kombat. But also around this time last year, on May 17th, you had John Wick Chapter 3 came out, Parabellum. Another great addition to that franchise, a surprising franchise. And as something that Paul and I spoke about last week, they did a free live stream of the first John Wick movie that you could watch from home. They also just released a John Wick Hex, which is a playable game on PlayStation a couple weeks ago. We know that they're working on a Chapter 4. We also heard rumblings of them working on a spin-off TV series called The Continental, based around the infamous hotel. So the John Wick franchise is, alive and kicking and very strong. So it was nice to kind of remember that last year around this time, that's when we had Chapter 3 come out. And it looks like domestically it kind of grossed around $171 million. And A Dog's Journey, another dog movie that was pretty much created to make you cry during the whole time. But since there's no cinema releases, basically I'd like to review, or I've been reviewing kind of things that you could watch at home. But I do want to mention that there has been one legitimate release this week, and it's Scoob. Scoob! That's my poor impersonation of Shaggy, but Scoob, a movie that was animated movie developed by Warner Brothers, being released on video on demand only. They have no plans right now of releasing this in theaters. Obviously, no surprise there because of the current situation. It's funny. That's why when you look at the movie poster here, it says in theaters, only in theaters, May 15th. I feel like I should edit that to say only on VOD as of May 15th. But from what I've seen, the story kind of follows the first ever meeting of Shaggy and Scoob, and then their progression into the group of mystery solving kids. They come across the Blue Falcon, and then they have to help him with this mission, or kind of solve this crime that's going on right now. It looks like a cute little fun movie to catch with the kids. If you have been a fan of Scooby-Doo, or you love Scooby-Doo, from the initial reviews that I've read, you might want to be a little careful with this one. It seems like the common sentiment about this movie is that they're pushing too much to the current generation, and there's a lot of references in there that kind of cater more towards the current young generation, where, for example, the Blue Falcon has seemed to be dabbing in his entrance. I think one of the characters mentioned social injustice, or whatever the case is. The reference of millennials is brought up. So I would be very careful about that. It might kind of steer you away from enjoying the movie. But again, it's something new to watch, and it's a legitimate studio release. And if you want a quick recap of the synopsis here, is Scooby and the gang face their most challenging mystery ever, a plot to unleash the ghost dog Cerberus upon the world. As they race to stop this dog apocalypse, the gang discovers that Scooby has an epic destiny greater than anyone imagined. The voice talent is actually very, very interesting and exciting here, where you have Will Forte, who's voicing Shaggy. You have Mark Wahlberg, who is the voice talent behind the Blue Falcon. Jason Isaacs is in here, who plays the villain Dick Dastardly. And then you have Gina Rodriguez, Zac Efron, Amanda Seyfried, and Ken Jeong. Oh, and Tracy Morgan is in here as, I'm not going to expose who they're voicing. That might be a bit of a spoiler alert there, but if you're interested, by all means, definitely do check out the movie. It might be interesting for you to watch. Now, let's say you don't want to plop down $20 for a new video on demand movie. I understand, it's a hard time right now. A lot of you may be furloughed or out of work, like myself. So what can you watch for free? So the last couple of weeks, I've been kind of reviewing some freebie movies, and I call them freebies, like letter B, because they are a downgrade from your normal A movie. And these are the types of movies that you tend to find for free on YouTube, of course with ads. So keep in mind that you will have to endure some ads while you watch these movies. But I handpicked 5 movies that you can catch for free on YouTube right now or this weekend, if you ever so inclined. And the first one is a classic, and that's Bloodsport. It is the classic Jean-Claude 1998 movie that kind of brought him into prominence. And if you've never seen this movie, this was a big hit with a lot of action fans back in the day. And the synopsis for Bloodsport is that Jean-Claude Van Damme makes his starring debut in the aptly titled Bloodsport, an American soldier at large in Hong Kong. Van Damme becomes involved in the Kumite, or Kumitai, a highly illegal kickboxing competition. Whoever survives the bout will be crowned Kumitai champion of the world, a title that has plenty of challengers with homicide in their hearts. The finale offers a duel to the death between Van Damme and reigniting Kumitai king Bolo Yeung. Apparently, the script is based on real-life exploits of a martial arts champ, Frank Dux, who also serves as the film's fight coordinator. So again, this is an all-time action movie classic. It's what brought Jean-Claude Van Damme's name into the populace and into everyone's homes, and what led to a sprawling career since then of action movie goodness, crazy feats, and him always doing those crazy splits on tabletops or floors in the future. So I definitely recommend catching that if you want to relive the classic, or if you've never seen it, or if you're with someone who's never seen it, might be something worth bringing up. Moving on to something more family friendly, Ribbit. Ribbit is a 2014 animated movie here. Ribbit is a frog with an identity crisis. Oh no, you don't want that with a frog. He hates hopping, he hates water, and pretty much hates anything a normal frog likes to do. Together with his best friend, a flying squirrel, he embarks on a journey in search of his rightful place in this world. And it stars the voice talents of Sean Astin of the Lord of the Rings trilogy and Goonies. And don't forget Goonies. And the lovable and never forgettable Tim Curry. Rest in peace. Sounds like a fun movie for you and the kids to enjoy, or for you just to play in the background while the kids watch and you can do something else. So moving on to another family-friendly movie is Freedom Force, Out of This World Adventure. This looks like one of those Incredibles / Big Hero 6 ripoffs here. But the synopsis reads as follows. There is a plot underway to change the course of history. 4 kids are chosen to be the Freedom Force, a gang of unlikely heroes who travel through time to change the outcome of sacred stories. The great adventure takes them to the deepest jungles, outer space, and underwater cities, but things go horribly wrong when a mad scientist tries to stop them. The kids have to battle cannibals, runaway hot air balloons, and a giant octopus before they can complete their quest and save the world from complete chaos. It does star the voice talents of Sarah Michelle Gellar and Christopher Lloyd. So you got some big talents behind this movie. Don't know if it's any good, but again, if you are inclined, by all means, check it out. And as I say every week, if you do check out one of these movies, do let me know how they are. I would love to hear your thoughts, and if it's something that I should probably check out for myself. So moving on to the next title, we have, and this is one I just saw and I just had to include it because it made me laugh just by the title alone, Saving Private Perez. And if you are thinking what I'm thinking, this is one of those homages to the great Spielberg movie, Saving Private Ryan, but with a Hispanic flavor to it. So this was a movie that came out in 2013. And synopsis is as such. Mexico's most notorious gangster, Julian Perez, answers to no one except his mother. So when mom needs to see her youngest son, who's fighting in Iraq, Julian and his band of bad guys embark on mission to bring him home. I think this is one of those classic movies that is meant for a bad movie night, or a movie when all of you who are present and watching are drinking your faces off. I used to do this thing with my friends called Bad Movie Night, where, we would pick a horrible movie, drink, and just make fun of the entire movie as we watch it. This definitely sounds like something that would be added to that rotation if we were still doing that. And it might be added in a future, implementation. So Saving Private Perez, definitely do not miss out on that one. And lastly, I did want to include something that is worth watching, something that may be interesting to a lot of you, and that is the documentary Sound City. So this documentary was actually directed by David Grohl. David Grohl is the drummer of Foo Fighters and also the drummer of Nirvana. He has a huge love of the music industry, but most importantly, the record industry. And this is kind of like goes into his deep investigation and telling of the industry as a whole. So basically, the synopsis reads as such. Deep in the San Fernando Valley, behind the train tracks and amidst dilapidated warehouses, was rock and roll's best-kept secret, Sound City. America's greatest unsung recording studio, housed a lot of legendary one-of-a-kind recording consoles and became the birthplace to the seminal albums that defined the 20th century of music. Fleetwood Mac, Neil Young, Rick Springfield, Tom Petty, Nirvana, amongst many others, all put magic to tape within these walls. It was rock and roll's hallowed ground. So Dave Grohl, like I said, directs this, and it features interviews and performances by iconic musicians who kind of made their careers out of recording from this studio. So I've seen a lot of clips from this documentary. I've never watched it from beginning to end. So I'm actually kind of happy to see it's actually available for me to watch. From those that I know who've watched it, said it is fascinating, especially if you are into music and into the recording of music and how musicians get together and put together their albums. It's definitely worth a watch, and I'm definitely going to be hopefully checking this out this weekend. If not, it's just good to know and nice to know that it is available out there. So I wanted to make sure that I left you guys on a good note, and a good recommendation for something that you can check out whenever you have the time. But like all of us, we have the time almost every weekend nowadays, since there's not much to do. But with that being said, that's the hour and that's the show. So thanks guys for watching. Again, I always appreciate you guys checking the show out, whether live or in the replay. Again, Mondays at 8 p.m., Fridays at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where I talk about all stuff that is pop culture, gaming, movies, TV, Japanese pop culture, whatever it is that I find interesting in the news, I bring it to you guys. So keep a lookout on the YouTube channel. I will be hopefully debuting some new videos there in the upcoming days. Other than that, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays are my Twitch streaming days. Today, I'm going back to playing some Final Fantasy VII Remake, so if you have the time and you're around, come by and chat while I continue that storyline. So, that being said, please stay cool, stay classy, stay safe, be kind to one another, wash your hands, wear a mask, just be careful out there, guys. I want to be able to see that you guys come back next week all fine and healthy. But stay healthy and be good and enjoy your weekends. All right, guys? Until next time, peace.